Hello, Mindsetters. Welcome to your spring school session, Life Sciences, with Luni and Aslam.
Hi, Luna, how are you?
I'm good, Aslam. How are
You're
you?
looking bubbly. I think you met some high-profile people today.
Yeah,
Rubbing shoulders.
I'm rubbing shoulders with the cool crowd.
Yeah.
So what are we doing for the Mindsetters today?
We are simply doing revision of paper 1 stuff.
All right. Guys, I hope you are excited for your Life Sciences lesson. Remember, Spring School is proudly brought to you by the Department of Basic Education. So don't forget to hit us up on Facebook, on facebook.com/LearnExtra, and you can tweet us at LearnExtra, and you can get all your Spring School schedules, notes, and videos on learn.mindset.co.za/forward/extra/revision/Spring School. So make sure you hit us up. Ask questions, answer questions, and just be interactive for this fun Springful lesson. Springful, did I just say that? Spring school lesson, guys, that's what I meant. Aslam. You see, it's you. Whenever you're here, stuff like this happens.
I have this effect, eh? Hi, guys, and welcome back. I'm hoping you're all ready and rearing to go. Remember, the lessons we learned today are as valuable as your input and your queries, because we need to address your issues more than what we have planned for you. So please don't hesitate to / and hit those buttons.
Yes.
All right, let's go through to what we are doing today. So what are we actually doing today? We are looking at examination questions, mainly from the 2014 exemplar. And what are we looking at? Which topics? You remember that in June, when we had the winter school, we covered reproduction in detail from this paper. So we are not touching on those questions. We are touching on human nervous system, the eye and the ear, endocrine system, plant responses to the environment, and the human impact on the environment. Those are the topics that we are looking at in detail. What we've done is we've taken every part of the question paper. In other words, we've taken section A right through section C where it is relevant. Every relevant question in these topics is covered. Why are we doing this? And we're going to do this for paper 2 as well later in the week. The reason being is that we want to prepare you properly for the final exam. In other words, how do I answer multiple choice questions? How do I answer one-word answers? How do I answer A, B, none, etc.? And how do I answer section B questions and section C questions? So this is what we are going to be going through. Let's not waste time and get straight into the questions. So we're starting with question 1, which is dealing with, dealing with multiple choice questions. Again, look at the instruction. Select the most correct option and write down only the letter next to the number of the question. In other words, in my answer book, I must be able to write 1.1 and next to it the answer, A, B, C, or D, the correct letter only. I do not rewrite the options. I do not write down the numbers. I do not draw diagrams. I simply write down 1 of 4 letters. It's A, B, C, or D. This is what I have to do. So the first question says, refer to the diagram below showing the structure of the human ear. So immediately they're directing you to a topic in a syllabus, and that is the human ear. So they're giving you a diagram, not many labels there, just 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So those are the 5 labels that are there. Let's just label the diagram first, and this is the practice that you must also get into. Before you look at the questions, on the diagram itself, you can write down the labels. So we start with number 1 here, which will be the semicircular canals. Number 2, coming from the structure here, this would be the auditory nerve. Number 3 here, the cochlea. And number 4, the tube here, the eustachian tube. And number 5, the tympanic membrane, commonly called the eardrum. Okay, so now we've got the labels. They can't ask us more than the labels and functions. So which part sends vibrations to the ossicles? Go back to the diagram. Where's the ossicles? These are the ossicle 1, 2, and 3. Hammer, anvil, stirrup. These are known as the ossicles. What are they connected to? They are connected to number 5, the tympanic membrane. So we go to our answer there. We could have just gone straight there because we know our work, but let's look at something else. Let's look at 3. Where is 3? These are the ossicles. Can 3 send vibrations to the ossicles? No. So you strike that one out already. What about 1? Look, where's 1? Can it sense vibration to the ossicles? No. So we have to stretch out 1 as well. And let's look at 4. 4 is a possibility. So now you had to choose between these two. If you know your work, you would have obviously chosen D, and your answer is D, the tympanic membrane. The idea, what I've just shown you now, is dealing with what we call elimination. So in other words, you eliminate what you consider the wrong answers, and you are left with one possible answer, which is easy, then you choose that one, or you're left with 2, so you can choose from one of those 2, which is the most correct answer. Let's look at the next one. Which part maintains equal pressure on either side of the tympanic membrane? Let's go to the tympanic membrane. There's the tympanic membrane here. And the closest to the tympanic membrane would be the ossicles. Ossicles do not have a label, so it can't be them. Next close to them is the oval window, which also doesn't have a label. And the eustachian tube. So your most possible answer is the eustachian tube. And if you knew your work, you would know that the function of the eustachian tube is to maintain equal pressure on either side of the tympanic membrane. So that is number 4, and that is A. Also remember, when you're learning the function of the eustachian tube, do not say balance. Because when you say balance, then you confuse that balance with the balance provided by the semicircular canals and the sacculus and utriculus. So rather use this sentence as it is, maintains equal pressure on either side of the tympanic membrane. In that way, you would not be confused between those functions. Let's move on. The following are effects of the secretion of different hormones. So different hormones are being secreted, and this is their effects. The first one, an increase in the blood glucose level. The second one, an increase in the heart rate. The second one, an increase in the amount of digestive enzymes. That was the third one, sorry. The fourth one, an increase in the blood flow to the skeletal muscles. Which one of the following combinations of the above effects is due to adrenaline? So they're giving you 3 possibilities. Remember, adrenaline is the hormone for flight or fight. Okay, so it's preparing the body for emergencies. Do you need an increase in the blood sugar level during an emergency? Yes, you would. Do you need an increase in the heart rate during an emergency? Yes, you would. Would you need an increase in the amount of digestive enzymes during this time? No, you wouldn't, because it's not important to digest food at this time. It's time to deal with an emergency. An increase in blood flow to the skeletal muscles, it's 4. So it's 1, 2, and 4. With that one, we go straight there. Your answer would be C. Okay, so you didn't even have to look at the story there. But again, you could use elimination. Wherever you see 3, you must know it's off. And the easiest one is this one on heart rate. You know that adrenaline increases the heart rate. That's a common one. So you look at your answers, and you look at where there's no 2. So these 3 were the more correct answers. You could have eliminated that one there. And then you look at, for example, number 3 is out, so these 2 must come out, and you're left with that one there. Elimination again. Good? Let's move on. The control center in the body that will be activated when an athlete is dehydrated. Dehydrated means he has too little water in the body, too little water in the blood. Water will lead to osmoregulation. Look at all the homework I'm doing before I look at the answers. And there's a particular organ that's going to secrete a hormone to let us know about the situation. And it can't be the cerebellum because no hormones are coming out from there. Right? It's not the control center. All right, let me rephrase that. We are looking for control center. It's not necessarily a part that secretes the hormone, so we'll have to rethink it. Although our answer is still going to be the same. In this case here, the control center is the pituitary gland. Cerebellum, does it have, look at the functions of the cerebellum. Does it deal with osmoregulations? No. Cerebellum, cerebrum? No. Corpus callosum? No. So these would have been struck off anyway. And the last one is pituitary gland, which releases ADH. So it picks up this stimulus of less water or even more water. Both ways, remember, it will still be the same control center. Why do we talk about control center? For any coordination that has to take place, you must have a control center. And hence, we're going to this control center here, which will bring about a response later. Let's go to the terminology quickly. Give the correct biological terms. Remember here, they're looking for the biological term. Not necessarily an example. We want the term that describes whatever we're talking about here. So the first one here, and we left this one here of reproduction because you didn't do this section. The period of development of an embryo in the uterus between fertilization and birth, and that will be gestation. That means the period of pregnancy that the woman is going through. Disease characterized by a lack of insulin production. This is obvious. It can only be diabetes mellitus. The tube that connects the pharynx and the middle ear, we spoke about it just now in the diagram of the ear, and that will be the eustachian tube. A process by which nutrients become highly concentrated in a body of water, leading to increased growth of organisms such as algae. Long sentence, but you can see already it's talking about water. That means it's talking about water quality, so this thing is coming from there. And what they're saying is when nutrients, or they could have said fertilizers, are run off into water and the nutrients become concentrated, and this causes growth of algae, and this is known as eutrophication. That's the only word you could use there, eutrophication. Okay, let's move on and indicate whether each of the statements in column 1 applies to A only, B only, both A and B, or none of the items. So your answer is going to be 3.1, for example, can either be A only, or B only, or A and B, or both. You could have written, same thing, could have written, or none. These are your answers that are possible. Let's not write 3.1, let's call this 3.7 as an example. Let's look at the first one, and we're going to work on here, so we're not going to rewrite these things. Type of development resulting in offspring that are capable of moving around soon after hatching. Your answer is either precocial or altricial. And remember, when I taught this section, I told you the word precocious means to be forward. Latching onto that, moving around soon after hatching, so your answer is A only. The next one, converts glucose to glycogen. Glucose to glycogen. The hormone is glucagon or adrenaline. And we would know that it is none of these two. The actual hormone is insulin. Glucagon does the reverse. It does this glycogen to glucose. Remember, glucagon is a hormone. Glycogen is a disaccharide, a polysaccharide. Factors affecting water availability, destruction of wetlands, poor farming practices, it will be both. Provides greater chances for the fusion of sperm and egg. External fertilization or egg internal, obviously internal fertilization increases the chances of fertilization. Characteristic of vivipary, a placenta is formed, live offspring is born. It would be both of them, A and B. There must be a placenta and live offspring. Examples of greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and methane. It will be both of them, A and B. And with that, Looney time.
Looney. Mindsetters, let's take a very quick break and I'll see you straight after this. Welcome back, Mindsetters, from that break. A huge shout out to all our spring school learners from the classes right here at Mindstairs. They are downstairs. That's why I'm pointing. That's why I'm pointing down there, downstairs. And apparently I had a question from one of the learners, and Aslam has the question. So Aslam will clarify it for them, and Aslam will just grade.
Looney sharp. Looney sharp. One of the questions that the learners downstairs has asked us is, if I write, for example, for 3.1, if I write just A, would I be penalized? No, I would have to say no in the final exam. You would not be penalized for that, because A and A only is fine, as long as it does not mean any of the others. And if you put A on its own, it's fine. But remember, there was a teacher that asked me once, what about, because of this situation, they asked me once, what if a child then writes A when it's supposed to be A and B? Do we give the 1 mark? No, because we can't give the 1 mark, because A here is linked to A only. So you can't give that 1 mark. It's either one of these choices. So A only, I'm putting the only in brackets, A, B, A and B, and none. Those are the choices that you have. So in a final exam, you won't be. But remember, your teacher in your classroom can be within their right to lay down certain rules so that you getting it properly at the end of the year. So that if there's a little bit of doubt, at least you having it exactly. Because remember, the instruction is telling you. So the instruction gives the right to the teacher in your classroom to mark only what is given. These are the choices that are given to you. And they told you here straightforward. So you needed to use one of them. There's an instruction, it tells you that. But remember, we may not penalize you if you just write A or B only there. And even if you just write both, by the way. Because both means A and B. There are only 2 things there. But rather be safe than sorry. Okay, let's move on. I hope that answers your question, young man or young lady. Question 4, refer to a diagram below which represents a portion of the central nervous system of humans specifically. There's a brain given to you there. Simple question. These are the types of questions that come in section A. They'll give you a diagram, and mainly your answers would be 1-word answers or letters, etc. No explanations, no long sentences, etc. are required here. It's generally just 1-word answers or 1 letter in this case. Write on the letter only. Letter only. So you only have to write the letter here. Remember, if this instruction changed to write the letter and the name, it's a different story. But here they're saying letter only. Of the part which regulates the heartbeat. But let's do what I practice normally. We label the diagram. So this would be the cerebrum. This would be the cerebellum. And this one here would be the medulla oblongata. Remember, in the brain, you need to know the cerebrum, you need to know medulla oblongata, you need to know cerebellum, you need to know corpus callosum, this one here, and you need to know the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. Notice that in the labeling of the nervous system, you don't have to even know the pituitary gland or the hypothalamus. Their functions come out later when you're doing the endocrine system and or homeostasis. That's where they are involved. But in terms of the nervous system, those are the labels you need to know. Write on a letter only of the part which regulates heartbeat and breathing rate. So in other words, what are they asking you here? They're giving you the functions, they're asking you name the part. So, but they didn't say name the part, they said give the letter, so they twisted it a little bit. So the part that does heartbeat and breathing rate would be the medulla oblongata, and therefore your answer would be C. Coordinates movement, coordinate, and this is something we need to clarify here. There's a difference between controlling voluntary action and coordinating voluntary action. To control voluntary action means to make the voluntary action possible. For me to talk to you, to make it possible, there's a certain part of the brain. But the fact that I'm talking to you, I hope, in a very coordinated manner that you can understand me, Luni, do you? Not always, eh? Most of the time, at least.
Half of the time.
Okay, that's a different function altogether. So the part that gives you the possibility of voluntary action is the cerebrum. But the part that makes it coordinated, like if I'm walking, the fact that I can walk, cerebrum. The fact that I'm walking straight, I hope, is cerebellum. So this answer here, the coordination part comes from cerebellum, and that is part B. Please do not make that mistake. Sometimes they give you examples. Instead of saying it like it is here, coordinating, they tell you balancing on a tightrope, etc. Although there's a voluntary part to it because you're stepping on it, but you have to balance, and the balance part comes from the cerebellum. Interprets what you see, and what you see, that means sight, is a sensation. Again, getting back to our functions, perceived sensation would be the cerebrum, and that would be part A. Has its hemispheres connected by the corpus callosum. That means it has two hemispheres, and these two hemispheres are connected by the corpus callosum. That will also be A. By the way, in that sentence, they're giving you the functions of the corpus callosum as well. They're telling you that the corpus callosum connects the two hemispheres of the cerebrum, thereby allowing for communication between the left and the right hemisphere of the cerebrum. Controls balance and equilibrium. That would obviously again go back to our cerebellum, and that will be part B. Question 5. Study the diagram below, which shows a reflex arc. Notice all our questions are coming from the nervous system. Diagram below, which shows a reflex arc. Again, if you look at that particular part there where A is pointing to, where is it coming from and where is it going to? It's going through the dorsal side of the spinal cord, and it's coming from a receptor. So therefore it has to be a sensory neuron. B, it's going to an effector, that's an effector. So therefore, it would be a motor neuron. This is the homework you have to do. See the middle of the spinal cord there, that hollow part, that is the central canal. D, this shaded portion of the spinal cord on the inside, it will be the gray matter of the spinal cord. Remember, in the spinal cord, the gray matter is on the inside and the white matter is on the outside. This part, all these parts would be the white matter. And E, the neuron between the sensory and the motor, would obviously be the connector or interneuron. Those are the two words that they accept in the final exam. No other words are accepted for that particular label. So give labels for each of the following. Now, where are we going to? The region D, we already discussed that. That is the gray matter, good. Neuron E, that we've already discussed that. And that is the interneuron or connector neuron. Write down the letter now. They changed now. They went from name, they went to letter. Of the part which transmits impulses to the central nervous system. And that would obviously have to be our sensory neuron, because the function of the sensory neuron is to transmit impulses from the receptors to the central nervous system. Remember, the sensory neuron does not convert the stimulus to an impulse. That's not its job. The part that converts stimulus to impulse will be the receptor. That's the receptor's job. Sorry about that. The receptor's job is to convert stimulus to an impulse. So the sensory neuron and sensory neuron is part A. We've done this already. And this is the one we are at A. Contains cerebrospinal fluid. That would be the central canal. And we label that was C. And the answer is C there. Good. Explain the effect on the reflex action if part B was damaged. Now remember, we have now that moved to section B questions. because we were with section A earlier. If part B, part B is the motor neuron. So in other words, we would be able to get the stimulus, convert the stimulus to an impulse here, transmit this impulse to the central nervous system, get up to this point here, and thereafter, if this is damaged, then the message will not reach the effector. We have to understand what is the function of an effector. The function of an effector is to bring about a response to the stimulus in a reflex action. For example, if we touch a hot plate with our hand, the effectors are the muscles of the biceps and the triceps, where the bicep contracts to pull away. So the muscles, we don't have to name them, by the way. The muscles of the upper arm contract to pull the hand away. The pulling the hand away is the reflex action, not the touching of the hot plate. That cannot be a reflex action. You cannot, that's not protection. If you're touching the hot plate, that is silliness, because you are touching the hot plate. Sometimes it's mistaken. Sometimes when you're a child, your parents are telling you, don't go near by the heater, but you will go there, and you will touch, and you will learn by experience. So the actual reflex is to pull away from there, and we must understand that. So obviously, if the motor neuron doesn't take the impulse to the effector, we would have a problem in that we would be able to feel, because all of that has happened. We would feel the stimulus or detect the stimulus, but we will not be able to respond to the stimulus. And that would be our answer there. So the sensation would be felt, but there would be no response. So we could then obviously have more damage. The nerve pathway in the above response is about 1.5 meters in length. A nerve impulse travels at 75 meters per second. Use this information to calculate the time taken for this reflex action to occur. Show all working. Very simple calculation. It's telling you that the impulse travels at 75 meters per second, and this one here is 1.5 meters in length. Therefore, we take 1.5 meters, divide by 75 meters per second, and our answer is 0.202 seconds. Remember, you've got to put the unit here, and if you know your math, you would obviously have cancelled out the meters there, and you're left with seconds there, and your answer is 0.02 seconds. Simple division problem there. Explain the significance of a reflex action. Why do we have this in our body? And that's obviously is to protect the body from, I would add here, protect the body from further, I'll write it on the top here, further damage. Remember, there's already damage because you're going to get burnt a little bit, but you're pulling your hand away. If you left your hand there, you would have got burnt further. Or if you stamped on a thorn, if you left your foot there, the thorn could have gone further and damaged blood vessels deeper into your skin, etc. by reacting quickly. So importance is it causes a reaction that is quick and therefore protects from further damage. All right, good. A little bit of a reading situation here, investigation. A learner carried out an investigation to measure the reaction time of two people, A and B. Each person had to ring a bell when a light flashed on. The time taken for each person to react was recorded and plotted on the bar graph below. The test was carried out 10 times with each person, obviously. So they're giving you a bar graph. Notice in the bar graph, the heading, which has two variables, reaction time of the two people. That's the two variables that we are looking at. And here we have attempt number, and here we have reaction time per second. They're giving you a key, person A, person B. And they've given you all the readings there that are going on there. What was the slowest reaction time? So in other words, who took the longest? Remember, slowest is not the quickest. The least amount of time will be the quickest reaction. So therefore, the slowest reaction was obviously 0.42 seconds. That's this one around there. This guy here, person B, in his first attempt. So that was the slowest reaction. Describe how the reaction of person B changed over the 10 attempts. So this is person B. We were looking at him just now. What has happened? you'll notice that from the first to the second it dropped, then to the third it dropped, then to the fourth it dropped, then it dropped again, and thereafter it stayed the same, and then it went up, 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 up again. So if you follow that, you don't have to draw that line, but you can read that clearly there. So if you're describing, you've got to say the whole thing. And therefore, you're going to say that it decreased first, then leveled off, and finally increased again. And you can even give the attempt numbers to be more complete in your answer. In the first few that you've named there, as I showed you there. Suggest a possible reason for the trend described in 6.2. Why did this happen? Obviously, the practice is going to make the time faster first. Because they're practicing it, the time will get faster. But later, the person may get tired, and the tiredness may slow down the reaction time. And with that, we'll have to stop halfway in that question. We'll come back to it after the break, Luni.
All right, Mindsetters, don't forget to tell all your friends that spring school runs from today until the 12th of October from 10 in the morning until 7 in the evening. So make sure you tell all your friends, because we're trying to help you guys prep for your final exams, because you want distinctions and nothing else. With Mindset and Learn Extra, you can achieve all of that. So make sure you tell your friends. And with that said, let's take a very quick break, and we'll see you straight after this. Welcome back, Mindsetters, from that break. Make sure you keep your eyes glued on our Facebook page, because we had a very special guest in our midst during some time, like a while ago. Okay, not a while ago, like just now. The Minister of Basic Education, Umamo Angie Motsecha, was here, and we were taking pictures, having fun with the guys downstairs as well. So make sure you keep your eyes glued on our Facebook page, because we want to make you guys jealous, because we're so cool, rubbing shoulders with special people. But Aslam.
But
you're also special, Aslam.
but you rub shoulders with me very often, so you should be special.
Yeah, you also, yes.
Not as special
Do
as...
you want those questions now?
Yeah, let's take the questions first. Or let's just finish these two questions, right?
Okay.
We're finishing two questions. We got your questions. We're noting your questions. We will take your questions just after this. So what was the stimulus in this investigation? You go back. Obviously, what was flashing? The light was flashing. So that was the stimulus that was given. That's easy. Light. And the last one is an easy one. You should be able to, you should not be able to identify with this. You should know about it. How would the reaction time of person A have differed if he or she had been under the influence of drugs? What do you think would have happened, Luni? Would have been slower, isn't it?
Yes.
The reaction time would probably decrease. Sorry, I got increased there. It should increase.
Now you sounding like you on drugs.
I must have been on drugs.
Took something before the show.
The reaction time would probably decrease. Cough mixture must be. Okay. So the reaction, yes, it's right what he's saying actually. I am under drugs. You see, I'm reading it wrong. The reaction time would increase, won't decrease. I'm looking at decrease, as I told you not to look at in a start. Increase means that it's going to take them longer to react to the thing. In other words, it slows down the reaction here, and increase the reaction time is the same. Slow down does not mean decrease. Slow down means increase the reaction time. What does increase in this sentence mean? That means it takes longer to react to the stimulus. Okay, let's take those questions.
Okay. Mary Jane Amajoy. Wow, if that's correct.
Mary Jane.
How do identical twins occur?
How do identical twins occur? Identical twins, remember this is in reproduction, not tested so much anymore, but the identical twins arise from one sperm and one egg. That means it's the same sperm and egg that has fused. There, you have the sperm coming in there, the nucleus fertilizing there. And when this egg is dividing, when it is dividing, when it's becoming morular and blastula and so on, the egg splits into two. Because they had one sperm and one egg, that means they had the DNA of the same egg and the same sperm. Therefore, when they split, there's no change in them. They will have identical DNA because they came from the same egg and sperm. Whereas the other side on this is fraternal. While we're there, let's explain that. This is two or more eggs, and sperm. Because remember, you can get twins, you can get triplets, you can get quadruplets, etc., etc. Different eggs and different sperm, then they would be not necessarily the same. Okay.
I want a twin.
You want a twin? Too late
It's
now
too
for
late
that.
now, yeah.
You can have twins, but you can't have a twin.
It's fine. And then Malinzi Sandlasha is asking, how does you said it's a synapse.
Synapse.
Synapse transfer impulse.
Right. Synapse, how does a synapse transfer impulse? Remember, you're getting axon ending there, and then you're getting a dendrites there. So these two ends of the two neurons do not touch. What Malinzi?
Malinzi, sir.
Malinzi sir. Okay. Wants to know is how does the impulse get from here to there when there's no contact? In this area here known as the synaptic cleft, you don't have to go into too much of detail. There are some chemical substances called neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters take the impulse from the axon of one neuron to the dendrite of the other. It is not as easy as I'm explaining it, but that is all you need to know at your level. There is an intricate, detailed process taking place in this area here, which you will learn as you go further in biology or physiology, as it's known later. You may learn that. But for us, we need to know the neurotransmitters, chemical substances, take the impulse from the axon of one to the dendrite of the other.
Okay. And then Mutsitsielwa Morgan is asking, what is the function of the cerebrum?
Morgan, Morgan wants to know, guys, you help me, your mindsetters. Morgan wants to know what is the function of the cerebrum. Now, if Morgan was in front of me, he would have been in trouble. Because the functions of the cerebrum are very easy to know, all right? We shouldn't be asking that because it's straight from the book, this question here, cerebrum. But nonetheless, Morgan, we're going to help you today. The function of cerebrum, firstly, is to perceive sensation. In other words, the possibility of seeing, smelling, hearing, etc. is interpreted in the cerebrum. That's one. Also, Morgan, it is important for higher mental abilities. And we can break this down into further so you get more answers here. One is for memory, to remember, which you're not doing at the moment, Morgan. Okay? And for judgment and reasoning. These are things that human beings are supposed to be capable of more than other organisms, especially these two here, judgment and reasoning. Even other animals have memory. Okay, higher mental abilities, perceived sensation, and controls. We spoke about this earlier. That one you should have had, voluntary actions. All the things that we can do and we can control it by our will, like talking, jumping, skipping, running, swimming, whatever, that we are controlling voluntarily, controlled by the cerebrum. But remember what I said earlier, control is the key word here, whereas the cerebellum coordinates this. Next one.
And then Sandil and MJ are confused about the meaning of dilate. So can you
Dilate, the meaning
clarify?
of the word dilate, yes.
Yes.
By the way, just for all the mindsetters, the word dilate is used in our syllabus in two main areas. Dilate, we talk about the skin blood vessels, and we also talk about the pupil in the eye. In these two cases, we use this word dilate. It's a very good word, and it's easy to explain. Many of you say it becomes bigger. It's not a good descriptor of dilate. Dilate means to become wider. Okay? To become wider. Okay? To increase in diameter. This is what dilate means. And the opposite of this would be constrict. So constrict would be mean to become narrower. Avoid the word big, small, thick, thin, etc. These are the two most apt words to describe dilate and constrict. So rather use the word dilate and constrict. If you're not too happy with that, then you talk about becomes wider and becomes narrower. Good?
Can I ask more?
Eh?
There's others from the inbox now,
Yeah.
not on the wall.
We can ask why we asked
Okay.
it. Why not?
Bakang is asking, how is sound generated in the ear?
Okay, I think, no, we don't have a question, but we'll have to park that one down,
Okay.
and we'll talk about it a bit later. The
Okay.
question is, how is sound generated in the ear? How do we hear, in other words? Please remind me in the last 5 minutes we do that one, yeah?
Okay, and then Tembinkosingongi, what happens if the eustachian tube is blocked?
Okay, so it's also related to
Yeah.
the ear, so we'll answer that a bit later.
And then this one, what is the function of the ventral horn?
A ventral horn of the spinal cord. Let's go back to the diagram.
From Lelo
It
Namkulwa.
does, in real terms, this is where the motor neuron leaves. Oops. This is where the motor neuron leaves the spinal cord. This is the only thing that we only have to know that part. In that, obviously, in detailed physiology and that, it may have other functions, but for our purposes, we say that the motor neuron leaves the ventral horn. Good?
Thanks, Aslam.
Right. We remember those two. We must park them off, right?
Okay.
Good. Now we are talking about the eye. The diagram shows two eyes, X and Y, focused on objects represented by arrows at different distances from the eye. So there's a very important point there. And the arrows. Objects A and C were 2 meters away from the eye. Objects B and D were 7 meters away from the eye. So A and C, 2 meters away from the eye, and B and D, 7 meters away from the eye. Okay? Write down the letter of the object that XIX is focused on. So that's IX, and this is IY. Look at the shapes of the lens, there and there. This lens is rounder or more convex. This lens is flatter. So this is obviously for distant vision. Right? So B and D are 7 meters away from the eye. So obviously, IX is focused. And now, what's important? Look at B and look at D. And look at the arrow that's put here in this diagram. Remember, when we have the image fall on the retina, it is the opposite way to which it was facing originally. So our answer would have to be B in that case, because B is facing downwards, and therefore it is facing upwards there in that way there. So two things you have to do there. One is to invert the diagram, and two is to look at the distance and the shape of the lens. IY is focused on IY. Look, this guy is looking downwards here, and there's C there that is 2 meters because it's rounder, so it's close vision. So your answer would be C. Name and describe the process that allows IY to perform a clear image on the right retina. So we're looking at near vision, IY, rounder lens. So we need to explain, name also, and describe. The process is known as accommodation, and we need to describe it. So during accommodation, firstly, the ciliary muscles. Notice that when we're talking about accommodation, we talk of the ciliary muscles. When we're talking about pupillary mechanism, that means dim and bright conditions, we talk of the circular muscles and the radial muscles. Here we talk about the ciliary muscles and the suspensory ligaments. Those are the two important things here. And notice that in accommodation, we talk about the lens, and in pupillary mechanism, we talk about the pupil and iris. Okay, good. So the ciliary muscles contract, the suspensory ligaments become slack. The tension on the lens decreases now, and the lens becomes more convex. This was given in the diagram already. The shape was given. So you needed to explain, how did the lens become more convex? It's because of these things here. Refractive power, if the lens becomes more convex, the refractive, the bending power of the lens increases, and a clear image now forms on the retina. Now imagine we had to ask you the opposite, that means IX. All we're going to say then is the ciliary muscles relax, the suspensory ligaments become taut. Remember, because the ligaments do not have the property of muscles, they can't contract and relax, we use the word slacken and becoming taut. The tension on the lens increases. The lens becomes less convex, or it becomes flatter. and the refractive power decreases, and the image will still form on the retina. So notice that you don't have to learn both. You learn one of the two, the other one is the opposite. We're just changing words and we're looking for near and far. Whereas if you learn both, in the exam you get confused and you mix them up. So rather you learn the one, you're confident about that one. If they ask that one, you merely write it down. If they ask the other one, then you are going to change it to suit the question. A grade 12 learner performed an investigation to determine the effect of light on the growth of plant shoots. The learner divided the plants that were used into 3 groups as follows. Notice already you know we're talking about plants, so we're talking about plant hormones. Group A, the tip of the shoot was intact. Group B, the tip of the shoot was removed. And Group C, the tip of the shoot was covered by a cap that does not allow light to pass through. The diagram below shows each shoot at the beginning and next to it the end of that, and the arrows show the direction of light. So here's shoot A, nothing covering it here. Shoot B, we cut off the tips, and shoot C, we covered it with something that does not allow light to pass through. Name the dependent variable in this experiment, and that would be the growth of the plant shoots, the one that's dependent on the stimulus light here. The independent would be the light in this case and other factors. State 2 factors that must be kept constant in this investigation. Same environment in which the shoots are placed. That means everything else apart from the light must be the same here, and even the direction of light must be the same. The same type of shoot, that means it must be the same species, because you different plants, they may differ in their reactions. And when we talk about environment here, we could be talking about temperature and the rest of it. The influence of which plant hormone is being investigated here, that is auxins. Explain the results observed in investigation A and C as illustrated in a diagram above. So A and C, what happened there? We look at A, the light is coming from the right, so caused the auxins to move to the shaded side of the shoot, leading to increased cell elongation and cell division there. There was therefore greater growth on this side, the shaded side. What does this do? It bends the shoot in the direction of the source of the light. We say that it is positively phototropic. Investigation C, the light still is put from one side. However, it has no influence on the distribution of auxins. Why? Because light could not pass through. So the plant is not knowing where this light is coming from, and therefore the shoot grew upright. With that, back to Looney.
Okay, mindsetters, before we go to a break, quick shout outs to Mary Jane, Ceslet, James, Mal B, Tabi, Sokenani, Alfred Lawrence, Mohaundi, Vomita, Mbuso, Malinzi, Salungelo, Sandile, and MJ. Thank you so much, guys, for posting on our page, for interacting on Facebook, for being awesome, and for tuning in. And with that said, let's take a very quick break, and I'll see you straight after this. Welcome back, my session. I'm so sorry. People are laughing in my ear, guys, and it's so distracting. But no, as if you noticing, we have. Yeah, so anyway.
Okay. Shall I go on?
Yes.
Rather, eh? I'll keep the limelight off you for a while.
Because, yeah, there's a countdown and he's laughing. And yeah.
State 2 ways in which the learner could improve the reliability of this investigation. Okay? So the question is asking, how can a learner improve the reliability of this? At this juncture, we're going to answer one question that was asked, so we won't answer it later. The learner wanted to know the difference between reliability and validity. Now, if I say that you are a reliable person, what do I actually mean, Looney? That
Reliable,
trust. I can trust you. Good, excellent. That's the best answer I could have ever asked for. So when we're talking about reliability, we want to know whether we can trust the results of this experiment. And that means if somebody else does the same experiment, would they get the same result? So reliability is referring to the repeatability of the experiment yielding the same or at least similar results over and over again. That's reliability. Simple. Validity, on the other hand, wants to know whether this is a valid experiment. The first measure of validity is, does the experiment set out to measure what it was supposed to? If the aim was, for example, my aim was to see whether Looney can save 100,000 rands by 10 years. But when I go and do the investigation, I look at what she's bought and so on, instead of looking at the bank balance. That means already I'm starting wrong. Or for example, let's give you something closer to home. I tell you tomorrow you're writing paper 1. And in the test, I include genetics. Already the test is invalid because it's not testing what it was supposed to test. So validity is more geared towards the method also. So it must be the correct method. So validity is affected by following the correct procedures, testing what you're supposed to test, and by keeping the variables controlled. The various variables, you must be able to control them. The only variable that must be changed is the very variable that you are testing for. Okay, so that's the difference between reliability and validity. Now, how does this affect this one? Obviously, we said already that it must be repeatability. So therefore, we must repeat the investigation. Must repeat it because it must give us the same result. If it gives us the same result, it's reliable. And or use more than one plant for each treatment. In other words, we must increase the sample size. If we were taking, for example, let's say we were looking at the attitudes of different people on antiretroviral drugs. Instead of taking 10 people, we must take 100 people. Instead of taking 100, we must take 500. So the more people we take in investigation, the more chances that our result will be reliable, or by repeating the investigation. That's where we are. Looney, can we get the other questions?
Do you want the ear ones now?
Yeah, let's go to the ear first, and I'm going to go back, people, to the diagram of the ear because it is relevant to what we were saying.
Okay.
So the first one.
Bakang is asking, how is sound generated?
Right,
in
how
the
do we
ear?
hear?
Yes.
Right.
And then Tembinkosi Nkongi is asking, what happens if the eustachian tube is blocked?
Tembinkosi wants to know what happens if the eustachian tube is blocked.
Yes.
Remember, what was the function of the eustachian tube? Is to maintain equal pressure on either side of the tympanic membrane, so that the pressures is equal on either side, so the membrane will not burst in either direction. So if the eustachian tube is blocked, then this balance will not be maintained, and the eardrum can burst. Because of this, obviously, will decrease the amount of sound that this person can hear. Okay, so that's the first one. Then, talking about hearing, the first question was, how do we hear? And that's why I said, let's look at the diagram, because the diagram must make it easy for us. The first thing we need to do is to trap the sound waves. So the first part 1 in the whole hearing process, is that the pinna traps sound waves. These sound waves then, too, go through the auditory canal, from the pinna to the auditory canal to the tympanic membrane. So they cause the tympanic membrane to vibrate. And when the tympanic membrane vibrates, 3, it causes the ossicles to vibrate. And remember, hammer, anvil, stirrup has. Hammer, anvil, stirrup. It will cause these ones to vibrate. And eventually, the oval window will vibrate. So that's the first part and the easy part. 1, 2, 3, and 4, the oval window. 4, oval window vibrates. When this oval window vibrates, it sends pressure waves inside the fluid of the inner ear, because it's connected to the inner ear and the cochlea. And inside this cochlea, the vibrations will then, the pressure waves would be converted to an impulse by the organ of Corti. which will then send this impulse. This is number 4, that will be number 5. Number 6 would be this impulse is then gone into the auditory nerve, which will take it, number 7, to the cerebrum, where it will be interpreted. That is all that you need to know. This is as easy as it is. There's obviously a more complicated process that's taking place in the cochlea. For exam purposes, you need not know that. You just need to know that in the cochlea, there's this organ of Corti, which is the hearing receptor, which converts the stimulus into an impulse, transfers that impulse to the auditory nerve, and from the auditory nerve it goes to the cerebral cortex, if you want to be more specific, or the cerebrum, where it is interpreted. Yes, now we can move on. The next question.
Yes. Lelo namqulwana, what is the function of the ventral horn?
The ventral horn of the spinal cord, we discussed that one earlier. We're saying that this ventral horn simply lets the motor neuron leave from that area. For our studies, that's all we need to know. Yeah?
Okay. Now you see. Okay. I can't find them now, the questions.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. May you please explain the difference between, no, you explained that,
Yeah.
reliability and validity.
That
Yes.
one, below that, after that.
Yes.
Now. From then on, it moves.
What is the cause of color blindness?
Color blindness, it's for paper 2. You hold on to that question for next week, for Wednesday, and you can answer that there.
Okay. What is the difference between asexual and sexual reproduction?
Asexual and sexual. In biology or life science, the word the letter A in front of a word means non. So asexual means non-sexual. Sexual means when gametes are fusing, in other words, involving different sex cells that come together to fuse to form the embryo and so on. Asexual will be without exchange of gametes.
Okay. Now I found the question.
Right.
Diva is asking, please explain how does ovulation occur when a woman has only one ovary?
Excellent
Does she
question.
go through the menstrual cycle
They're giving the answer
monthly
also, Shane.
or what?
She's giving the answer.
Oh,
also.
okay, so asking and answering.
Right. So she's asked the question and answered the question at the same time. But she's answered with both sides. Huh? The question is very simple. If a woman has only one ovary, for some reason she had ovarian cancer and they took out one ovary, or any other reason they pull out an ovary, what is the situation with her ovulation? How often does ovulation take place? Ovulation will take place every alternate month. Remember, generally the body works that one ovary releases an egg for 1 month. The cycle, the next cycle, the other ovary releases another egg. So it will be alternate months.
Okay, and then from Mohao Ramasedi, do drugs affect neurotransmitters or the nerve cells?
Mainly the neurotransmitters. The drugs affects the neurotransmitters, slowing down the reaction going there. It's a very complex process as well, but for your question, that's sufficient answer there.
Okay, and then Lawrence, what is the difference between adrenaline and aldosterone?
Let's go
What's
back
that
to my
word,
page
Aslan?
here.
What?
Aldosterone.
Yes.
Right, so Lawrence wants to know the difference between adrenaline and aldosterone.
Yes.
Right, first problem, why is he asking this, is because they are both secreted by the adrenal glands. Both of these hormones are secreted by the adrenal glands. This one here, adrenaline, prepares the body for flight or fight. In other words, it prepares the body for emergencies. Whereas aldosterone is involved with the salt concentration of the blood. So that's the difference. The one is controlling the amount of salt in your body, and the other one is preparing the body for emergencies.
Okay, and then Alfred is asking, what is the difference between reflex arc and reflex action?
Good. I'm getting some good questions. I'm actually happy that these guys are asking this, and we didn't leave it for last minute. We wouldn't have been able to answer all. So reflex arc, reflex action. I use a very simple explanation here. Reflex action is the doing word here as such, in inverted commas. The reflex action is, what is it? It is a quick, automatic, automatic response to a stimulus. So that is what it is. The fact that you're pulling your hand away, quick automatic response to a stimulus, this is the action. And the arc, on the other hand, the arc, reflex arc, we just add in front of this the pathway that an impulse follows to bring about a quick automatic response to a stimulus. Yes. In other words, what we're saying is in the arc, the definition of a reflex action is included. But the arc is actually telling you, for example, if I tell you, go from here to Joburg, that's the act of going from here to Joburg. But I tell you, when you're going to Joburg, please go straight down Republic Road, turn left on at the first robot, and then turn right, etc., etc., etc. That is the pathway you are taking to get to Johannesburg. So it's the pathway, in other words, the route that is followed by the impulse to bring about this reaction.
Okay, and then Tabi, so does the nucleus of the motor neuron have function?
All nuclei will have functions. All nuclei of every cell in the body is to control the activities of that particular cell. In other words, DNA replication, etc., whatever that must happen in that cell will happen via that nucleus. The nucleus is the brain of a cell.
Okay, now
Good.
we're going to take a break, Aslam, apparently.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, we're taking a break.
Yeah.
It's a short break. All right.
Yes, you know how things roll. Live show. It's nice.
Okay, great.
My status, we take a very quick break and we'll see you straight after this. Welcome back, guys, from that break. I hope you're still excited and you're still refreshed and you're still learning more and learning extra. Spring School with Aslam.
Thank you, Luni. Let's move.
Yes.
Guys, I'm very excited with the number of questions that we have received. We're going to try to get to some of them again. But before we get there, we feel it's important that we skip the other two questions. We go straight to environment because it's a section that you tend to ignore. And yet there are 25 marks for environment. That is human impact in the exam. Remember, this is grade 11 work that you should have done in grade 12 again. So here they're saying the human HSRC has conducted a survey on food security across all provinces. The results showed that the overall percentage of food secure households in South Africa is 45.6% as opposed to 48% in 2008. So there's a decline. The results indicating the percentage of food insecure households in each province according to the latest survey are shown in a table below. So Eastern Cape 36, Limpopo 31, etc., 30, 29, coming down to Western Cape where 16% of food security. What is meant by food security? That's a simple definition, and that is having access to enough food on a daily basis so as to ensure healthy living. That's the definition there. So it means all people must have access to food on a daily basis, ensuring healthy living. Use the data on a table to draw a bar graph for the 4 provinces that have the highest percentage of food insecure household. Okay, and there you go. You would have chosen from there the highest food secure would be Eastern Cape, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and the Free State there, which would have had those there. And again, heading, and the bars are equally distant apart, and they have the same width, and you're going to plot it according to proper. Remember, use a ruler to do this, so it's easy. The bar graph is one of the easier graphs to draw. Can't be hard to do that, remember? Okay? State how the use of fertilizers by farmers can increase food security for a country. How can fertilizer increase food security? Obviously, the more fertilizers, we're going to provide more nutrients that will increase the crop growth, hence we can supply people with more food. That's on the one side. On the other side, how can the same thing, increase of fertilizer, how can it decrease food security? And there, we come there where fertilizers are expensive, number one, causes food prices to increase because the more fertilizer you add, the more cost you must add to the food prices. Then, overuse of fertilizers can cause oxygen deprivation in soil, which will eventually decrease crop production. And we can also talk about how we can have harms elsewhere as well in environment. Good. State how the use of pesticides by farmers can increase food security for a country. Notice it has two effects. Obviously, if we use pesticides, it will kill the pests, and therefore they won't cause harm to the crop, and therefore we'll have more crop to give to people. On the other hand, how does it decrease? It could kill pests as well as their predators, and therefore hence more pesticides would have to use, raising the cost of food. And also pests, with using regular use of pesticides has proven that the resistant ones population become more over time, and therefore eventually the pesticide will be useless and the crops will be damaged in that way as well. State two factors other than the use of fertilizers and pesticides which may have led to a decrease in the percentage of food secure households in South Africa since 2008. Now you just had to state them, didn't explain. If they said explain, then you would have to explain how. Massive unemployment in the country, that's obviously a big thing, because there's no money, you can't buy food. It's no sense if the food is available and you don't have the money to buy it. So food security is still not in your favor in that sense. Increase in the size of the human population since 2008. Farms destroyed for development, more houses needed. We have to get rid of farms, and therefore there's less crops. Decrease in subsistence farming. Prolonged unfavorable environmental conditions. Those are straightforward things there. Next one says the carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere was recorded at 400 parts per million in May 2013 compared to 316 parts per million in 1958. All right? This change is due to an increase in the use of fossil fuels as well as an increase in deforestation. Describe how deforestation contributes to the high carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. That's easy. Obviously, there's less trees, so therefore less carbon dioxide is going to be used from the atmosphere for photosynthesis, and hence more carbon dioxide that is in the environment. State one other impact of deforestation on the environment. It will lead to the loss of biodiversity, because there are animals that there are plants that we're going to kill completely, and there were animals that were living in those in those areas, and therefore they will also be destroyed. Further, we also cause soil erosion, because now the topsoil will be washed away very easily because of that. Explain why we should be concerned about the rising carbon dioxide levels. This is a very easy question. Increased carbon dioxide leads to the enhanced greenhouse effect. That means there will be more of the greenhouse gases that will be in the environment compared to what is the natural. This causes an increase in global temperatures. This could rise to a rise in sea levels because of melting ice, and because it can also cause floods. It can also cause change in the climate, which can lead to the extinction of certain organisms and therefore disrupt the entire food chain. Suggest one way in which the government can reduce carbon emissions caused by the generation of electricity. They're being specific. They're talking about the generation of electricity and how the government, not you, how the government can reduce the carbon emissions. So you need to be specific here. And the main thing that we could talk about here is use alternate forms of energy. That's the main purpose that the government can do. We can also say that the government can pass legislation, laws that will fine big industries that are using too much electricity. We could add that there. Or on the other hand of the coin, instead of putting fines, they can give rewards to those companies that meet targets to bring it down as well in the same way here. Remember, we're talking of the government, we're not talking of an individual. So you can't say here, put the lights off when you're not using it, because you're not the government. The government can't do that. The government must put a strategy for the whole country to bring that down in that way there. Good. Question?
Okay. From Lapeto, James.
Yeah.
I always mix accommodation and pupillary mechanism. Any tips?
Right, any tips?
Yes.
Right, let's go back to our story here. First of all, The question that we answered here was accommodation. The tips that I'm going to tell you, for a start, remember, when you're talking of accommodation, what is involved? The lens, the suspensory ligaments, and the ciliary muscles. And accommodation has to do with near and distant vision. So always remember this. Accommodation is dealing with near and distance. So that is what we get from there. And accommodation is dealing with near and distant. Okay? And it deals with the lens, the suspensory ligaments, and the ciliary muscles. Whereas the pupillary mechanism is dealing with bright and dim conditions. So in other words, we're dealing with light here, LP. Light deals with the pupil. And when we talk about the pupil, we talk of the circular and radial muscles of the iris. That's what we need to know there as well. So if you can remember that, it will help you in that direction. That's it?
Okay, no.
Okay.
Karabo Sibeya, may you please explain how balance takes place in the human ear? Can I answer this? No, I'm joking.
Eh?
You just do the headstand.
Yeah, that's what I'll do to explain. Okay, Karabo, no?
Yes.
Karabo wants to know balance. Remember, there are two parts in the ear that deal with balance, semicircular canals and the utriculus and sacculus.
While you're on that,
Yeah.
Juhi is asking, how does the semicircular canals maintain balance?
There we go.
just
So it's the same
combine.
question.
Yes.
Excellent, right? So the semicircular canals, remember, they have circles in different directions. And in this semicircular canals, you have swellings at the bottom called ampullae. Inside this ampullae, we have special cells, semicircular canals, called cupula, or cupulae, many. These cupulae are sensitized by the direction and speed in which we move, the direction and the speed, left, right, forward. This is what the semicircular canals. So the semicircular canals inform us about the direction and speed in which. How? Because these cells, special cells called cupula, sense them. And the sacculus and the utriculus, utriculus have macula. Remember, some. Sacculus, utriculus, they have macula. These maculae are sensitive to the position of the head in relation to the body. In other words, as we're standing upright now, my head is upright, the brain knows that the head is upright compared to the body. If I go this way, it's going to know that that's happening. Why? Because different maculae will be stimulated, and these maculae, by the way, are sensitive to gravity. That means they will settle according to gravity in different positions, and in this way they tell us, hence this comes with the headstand. This one comes with a headstand to tell you that if I'm doing the headstand, my brain knows that my body is now in the reverse position because gravity is taking them in that direction. Any more to do?
No, we're done now. It's fine.
Too much?
No, it's
Too
time.
little?
It's time to go.
Time is up. When time is up, time is up.
Yeah, it's time now. Thank you, Aslam,
Thank you,
for
Loni.
the awesome lesson. Mindsetters at home, thank you so much for tuning in. I've posted the pictures with the Minister of Basic Education on our Facebook page. So go check them out and just get jealous because you're doing great things here at Mindset. And remember to tell all your friends to check out Spring School starting from today until the 12th of October, 10 till 7 p.m. Don't forget to tell your friends because we're trying to help you have good marks for your final exams. We're prepping you guys. We love you very much and thank you so much for tuning in. Goodbye from us.
Bye.